It was a chilly October evening, the full moon casting eerie shadows that danced upon the old, weathered walls of the abandoned asylum. The year was 1927, and I had heard whispers of a tale so unsettling that it sent shivers down my spine. The story, I was told, unfolded on a night not so different from this one, at precisely 2:33 a.m. As I ventured into the darkness, an old man's voice echoed in my mind, recounting the unsettling events of that night. The asylum had long been rumored to be haunted, but it wasn't until that fateful night that the truth became undeniable. The clock had just struck 2:33 a.m. when a group of daredevil investigators entered the asylum. They carried with them an assortment of tools, including cameras and recorders, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. The room they entered was dimly lit, the air heavy with foreboding. "What are we doing here, Mike?" whispered one of the investigators, his voice trembling with fear. Mike, their leader, chuckled nervously. "Just remember, guys, we're here to prove there's nothing to be afraid of. Let's head to the basement, that's where the real horror stories say the ghosts reside." The basement was a labyrinth of decrepit hallways, lined with cells that had once held the most deranged of patients. It was there, at 3:17 a.m., that they heard the first eerie conversation, a whisper so faint, it seemed to be carried on a ghostly breeze. "Did you hear that?" one of them gasped. The voice was barely a murmur, and it could easily have been dismissed as a trick of the imagination. But it wasn't. As they pressed on, the conversations grew more distinct, the voices taking on an otherworldly quality. They were the tormented whispers of the asylum's former inhabitants, sharing tales of agony and despair. "I just want to go home," cried one voice. Another voice chimed in, "The doctors, they never stop." The investigators pressed on, determined to uncover the source of these haunting conversations. But the asylum's oppressive atmosphere seemed to tighten around them. It was as though the building itself was trying to keep its secrets. The clock ticked on, and at 4:44 a.m., they reached a small room at the heart of the basement. Inside, they found a collection of old medical records, detailing the horrifying experiments conducted on the patients. The investigators were horrified, their voices trembling as they read the notes. "They did unspeakable things here," Mike said, his face drained of color. The conversations grew more intense, the voices overlapping, their words a cacophony of anguish. "We never left, trapped in this darkness." In their panic, they realized they were not alone. Shadows twisted and danced on the walls, and the air turned icy cold. Desperation and terror consumed them as they made a hasty retreat, but the tormenting conversations followed them, echoing through the winding hallways. As they reached the asylum's entrance, a chilling presence seized them. The whispers were louder now, the voices more sinister. They knew they were in the grasp of something malevolent, and they couldn't escape. The hallway behind them stretched into a seemingly endless abyss of darkness, and the heavy wooden doors that had granted them entry were now sealed shut, as if they had never been there. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped within the asylum's sinister grip. "What's happening? We need to get out of here." Mike's voice quivered with terror as he tugged on the doorknob, but it refused to yield. Their only exit was locked, and the malevolent force that had haunted them all night was closing in. The conversations that had tormented them now grew deafening, a cacophony of wails and moans that seemed to emanate from the very walls. They clutched their ears in agony, trying to block out the nightmarish symphony. It was as though the tormented spirits of the asylum were attempting to communicate something, to reveal a truth they were never able to share in life. In the flickering light of their flashlights, the investigators caught glimpses of shadowy figures darting in and out of their vision. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural malevolence, and a sense of dread overcame them. Mike's voice quivered as he tried to maintain composure. "We need to stick together, guys. Whatever this is, it's trying to divide us. Stay close, and we'll find a way out." The weight of his responsibility as the group's leader was almost tangible. But unity was challenging to maintain as the asylum seemed to play tricks on their minds. Hallways twisted and shifted, leading them in circles, and doors appeared where they hadn't been before. The sense of disorientation and despair was growing with each passing minute. At 6:06 a.m., they stumbled upon a room with flickering candles and an old, ornate mirror that bore an inscription, "To see beyond the veil, look within." Their reflections seemed to move independently of them, their faces twisted into grotesque masks of terror. The room felt like a portal to another realm, a realm where the horrors of the asylum intersected with their reality. One of the investigators reached out to touch the mirror, and it rippled like water, distorting their own reflections further. In the glass, they saw the tormented spirits from the conversations, writhing in agony. They were trapped, just as the investigators were, their forms twisted and tormented. Frantic whispers echoed through the room. "Help us," they moaned, their voices desperate and pained. The investigators, unable to tear their eyes away, were drawn deeper into the mirror's depths. Their own voices joined the tortured chorus as they tried to communicate with the imprisoned spirits. The room seemed to expand and contract, folding in on itself. Reality and unreality blurred as the investigators and the spirits became intertwined. The malevolent presence closed in, and it became clear that escape was impossible. The clock on the wall ticked ominously, and at 6:66 a.m., the room shattered, plunging the investigators into darkness. The conversations of the tormented souls reached a crescendo, their cries and wails melding into a nightmarish cacophony. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, silence descended. The investigators found themselves back at the asylum's entrance, the heavy doors now standing ajar. The darkness that had swallowed them had released its hold. The investigators stumbled out into the cold light of dawn, their minds reeling from the horrors they had witnessed. The asylum, once a place of malevolence, now lay silent and still. It was as though the malevolent force had retreated, content with having shared its story, leaving the investigators with a sense of unease and dread that would never truly fade. To this day, the events of that night remain a mystery, a true horror story that defies explanation. The asylum stands as a testament to the darkness that lingers in forgotten places, and those who dare to enter may find themselves ensnared by a malevolent force that will leave them forever haunted, their souls trapped in the conversations of the tormented.